Dr. Doom recreates the Fantastic Four. Although admittedly, it's not the exact Fantastic Four. It's really more of the UOS that he created, which was a group from the Incredible Hulk, issue number 254, back in the main Marvel universe, and basically was an attempt to duplicate the Fantastic Four. But you guys will see what I'm talking about as we get through this video. Now, this is told from 3 different perspectives, and it can be a little jarring, but fortunately, you have me to make sense out of it. So, these 3 perspectives are Dr. Doom talking to Tony Stark. It's Dr. Doom basically leading something called Project 4, and then it's Dr. Doom reflecting on his own past. And so, if you guys recall the video that we did where we got the origin of Dr. Doom, that he was Reed Richards, he was supposed to be a leader of the Fantastic Four. The Maker showed up in this universe and then basically twisted him, broke his mind, and turned him into Doom. That what he does is reflecting on his own past. We get that little bit of an origin here, right? Where the question's asked of the class, what is the 4th dimension? Can anyone tell me? And of course, Reed Richards raises his hand, and that's when you switch to the Project 4 perspective, where he simply just says, a prison. Time closes in on us like the walls of a cell. If you are to make it past those walls, escape this prison that you were born into, you'll have to think in 4 dimensions. I am doomed and I will be your teacher. And then you switch to the next perspective, the one that's basically happening in the here and now, which is where he's talking to Tony, and you just asked him, right? Like, do you have time to speak? Now, one of the things to know about Tony Stark in the new Ultimate Universe is that if you guys recall the video that we did where basically the Ultimates were tricked into arriving at a facility where they thought they were liberating a bunch of captured superheroes, only to discover they had been lured into a trap and were ambushed by the Incredible Hulk and his immortal weapons. Tony Stark was basically dead, right? Like he was an inch away from dying and Dr. Doom saved him, but Tony Stark realized him going out into the conflict like that is a massive danger. Because while the Ultimates is designed to kind of be self-sufficient to a degree, it kind of requires Tony Stark to at least operate as the brains behind the operation. And so without Tony Stark, it would seemingly all fall apart. To say nothing of the fact that he has a very personal motivation in organizing a team that's designed to basically destroy the Maker. And so, in response to that, he created what you and I might call his own version of Doombots. Right? Basically, beings that go out there and fight in his stead. And so, again, that's when you jump to this little bit of a flashback. Now, the cool thing about the flashback moments, I don't necessarily say that they're necessary, but they are awesome because they show us how Reed's life could have unfolded had the Maker not shown up. Or at least allows us to imagine it. Case in point, when he's hanging out with Ben Grimm. Have you ever wondered what would happen if Dr. Doom's origin story was even more twisted? Well, the new Ultimate Universe, Earth 6160. Hassan Answer. And it's a wild ride. Forget everything you know about Victor Von Doom, because this version is a complete and shocking reality. So, in this new reality, the world is ruled by a council of villains led by the Maker, the evil Reed Richards, from the original Ultimate Universe. The Maker's goal is to prevent superheroes from ever emerging. He's reshaped history, and one of his key projects was Latveria. He didn't just conquer it, he built it from the ground up, turning it into his personal fortress and think tank. He gathered the world's brightest minds to work under him, all serving his grand, twisted design. And who was his top student? His most brilliant protege. You guessed it, a young man named Victor Von Doom. But this isn't the arrogant aristocrat we know. This Victor was a mentee, someone who looked up to the Maker. For years, he worked alongside him, helping to build this new world order. But eventually, Victor grew disillusioned. He saw the Maker's tyranny for what it was, and decided he had to be stopped. He began plotting, secretly building a resistance. He knew he couldn't face the Maker alone. His plan, to create his own team of heroes. He orchestrated the events that would give the Fantastic Four their powers, and even leaked information to Howard Stark, setting the stage for Tony Stark to become Iron Man. Essentially, this Dr. Doom is the secret architect behind the rise of the new Ultimate Universe's heroes. But the final twist is the most poetic, when he finally confronted the Maker a brutal battle ensued. Victor was defeated, his face horrifically scarred and his body broken. But as the Maker gloated, a temporal paradox he created caught up with him, trapping him in a time loop. With his mentor gone, Victor took his place. He donned the iconic metal mask and green cloak, not as a symbol of his own ego, but as a perversion of his former master's legacy. He became the new Dr. Doom, a ruler who despises the throne he sits on, forever bound to the shadow of the man he helped create and then fought to destroy. It's a tragic, complex origin that flips the script entirely, making Doom a reluctant, behind-the-scenes hero forced into a villain's role. Was that they were getting into, and so that S when you switch back to the conversation between Doom and Tony because Doom asks him, "How did you know?" Right? And Tony says, "From this conversation, I saw it months ago, though I really do forget how it ends." And Doom asks him, right? Like you used time travel. You saw this, and you said nothing. And Tony's just like, I guess I didn't. Well, it really just didn't seem relevant. What does it change? Right. And that S where you jump back to the Maker surgery on Doom and you find out what it was that he removed because he has holding this little bit of brain in his hand, and he says, now there's a change for the better. The extraction was a complete success. This little bit of gray matter was the troublemaker. And that's where Doomy is just like, what are you talking about? Right. What did you take from me? Not only that, while we do end up learning that over time, basically years that's passing, that the EUS, or this new Fantastic Four team, become far more capable as time goes on. That in the conversation between Doom and Tony, Doom says, it changes everything, right? He knows me better than I know myself. It's hopeless, Tony. It always was. I was a fool to think otherwise, even for a moment. And that's where the Maker explains what it was that he took from Doom. He says, you know that feeling that you get when you unlock some secret of the universe, formulate a fundamental law, or discover a new dimension. That profound, euphoric moment when something suddenly clicks into place is the best feeling in the world, isn't it? Right? You can be honest with me, Doom. I already know how you feel. Not even love comes close. At least, not for you. You love science above all else. And he says, that's what I cut out. That feeling. Or at least your capacity to feel it anyway. And so Doom can no longer be excited over scientific achievement. That there is no real drive for him to push the envelope and be anything better than what he is. And in fact, where Doom and the UOs do successfully manage to sabotage one of the Maker's facilities, that in his conversation with Tony, he says, one cannot escape one's Maker any more than one can escape oneself. And when the Maker is talking to Doom, he says, be happy. Left you. You're genius. I was not so generous with others. I find myself in need of an assistant. Doom, you're going to help make a better world. And Doom just simply says, my name is Reed Richards, and I will never assist you. And so that went into the experiment of the Maker, where he basically psychologically conditioned Reed to believe he is doomed, changing his physical appearance, the whole 9 yards. It's why he wears the mask. So it's kind of the beginning, right? The set of events that lead up to that origin, as twisted as it is. And so that's where he seemingly addresses Tony Stark project for all of these guys. And he says, I will make a better world in this one's place, even if there is no place for me in it. And so where Doom is talking to Tony, Tony simply says, I have to go. Right. No matter how many of myselves that I create, it never seems to be enough. Those teenagers killed me, right? No, I cannot force you to stay doomed. The ultimates is by design a choice. I'll simply just say that this might not work with you, but it definitely does not work without you. And so again, that's when you jump to another flashback with the Maker, where once the surgery is complete, Doom is basically turned into an assistant, right? Just doing grunt work around the office, particularly cleaning the entire lab. Which seems to stretch on into infinity. And in fact, with regards to these white silhouettes that Dr. Doom sees kind of following him around, he actually addresses them here right in this moment. And he says, I know what you think, right? You think that I'm giving up on you, on us. And that S, when Hank Pym shows up to visit him. Because this conversation between the two of them becomes something incredible. And honestly, I do only think IV ever loved Hank Pym in the Ultimate Universe more than I love him in this part of the story. Because where he talks to the silhouettes, at least Doom does. Right? It tastes him right. I'm trying. I swear it. Right? I would do anything to be with you. The whole idea behind them and why Doom sees them comes through his conversation with Hank Pym. Because at that point, the narrative starts to shift between Dr. Doom addressing his silhouettes and Dr. Doom talking to Hank Pym. Of course, the conversation with Pym being in the here and now. But when he's talking to the silhouettes, he says, "We all have to face reality. All my efforts to break through the barrier around the past and prevent your and our circumstances, all my efforts have failed. And now, the Immortus Engine is the only thing keeping Tony Stark alive. Even if I could build another in time, Steve Rogers was right. I would only continue to fail." And while you do get this brief moment where he's experimenting with the cosmic radiation machine, right? And there's this kind of warning. Maximum safe threshold exceeded. Exposure fatal. That's going to become important here, right? Because when he starts talking to Pym, he says, "I am considering leaving the Ultimates." And Pym just says, "Right? I consider that about 100 times a day." And Doom simply says, "Right. I am not stable, and I cannot be trusted." And so Hank Pym says, "I had pretty much the same thought back when I had my little revelation." And he says, "You know what Captain America told me?" He says, "His failures are not your failures. His sins are not yours." And of course, Steve Rogers was right, as always. And he says, "You decide who you're going to be, Doom." And so in this conversation with these silhouettes, right, he says, "Yes, Primera be failed. But I have not given up, right? Given up on the idea of being with them." He says, "There is another way for us to be together. All of us. I just need time." And so, jumping back to this conversation with Pym, he says, "The latest revelation of basically the Maker being an alternate reality version of me is only a part of the problem." He says, "I am not well. There are times that I feel figures close to me looking over my shoulder like ghosts. Not presences or absences. The shape of loss. I feel them now." And so Hank Pym asks him, "Right?" He's like, "Ghosts. I see those sometimes. Only for me. It's the guy I was before the accident. I don't think that they ever really go away. I think they just kind of follow you around forever. It used to really bother me. This thing that I couldn't shake. And then one day I had this thought, and I felt better ever since. Just because you're broken does not mean that you need to be fixed," which is a beautiful statement and incredibly profound, because I think that oftentimes, especially for someone like Dr. Doom, he latches on to the person he used to be, right? I used to be Red Richards, and my life could have looked like this. And because that's the thing that he's always trying to get to, anything other than that is abnormal, broken, twisted, and it needs to be fixed. But who's to say that it does? We as human beings are a constant work in progress. And so just because right now you're not who you were 10 years ago, and you're not who you imagined yourself becoming, does not mean that you're some broken version of yourself. It simply just means you're not what you imagined. And that's it. That's really all it is. And so with Project 4, essentially complete, right? Weeding out everybody that he may simply say are the failures, right? The ones that didn't make the cut. We're finally down to the final 4 members of the team, which he refers to as the Fantastic Force, which is an awesome throwback to the Sire days. For those of you guys who don't know, there was basically a point in time when Nathaniel Richards, the father of Reed, ended up going back in time and forming a new team to deal with Hyperstorm, the son of Franklin Richards, by bringing Franklin as a teenager onto a team called Fantastic Force. And in fact, in a lot of ways taught Franklin how to use his powers, so it's cool to take that concept and adapt it to the new Ultimate Universe. But nonetheless, switching over to the conversation between Hank Pym and Dr.